Hello to you all. Today we're going to deal with the question of what happens if you said that you're going to give money, charity money, to your synagogue. Do you have to keep your word? In the time of the Beit HaMikdash, there was a halacha that as soon as you thought that you were going to give over some of your property to the Beit HaMikdash, to the temple, it was immediately given over. You didn't need any formal act of acquisition. The thought that you want to give it over already transferred the ownership. Of course, we're talking about a definite and positive final thought, not just thinking maybe yeah, maybe no. Okay? A definite thought, and the thing becomes hektish. It goes over to the domain of the Beit HaMikdash, of the Gizbar of the Beit HaMikdash, and it becomes holy. The question is, what happens in our times? In our times, we don't have a Beit HaMikdash anymore. These halachas of hektish do not apply anymore. So, any money that we want to give over to our synagogues or to our yeshivot is not hektish. It's what we call chulin. It's just normal. Our charity today is not like the hektish in the time of the Beit HaMikdash. So that means that this halacha of thinking and it being given over does not apply anymore. But nevertheless, there's a different halacha that kicks in here, and that is the halacha of a vow. When you say that you want to give something to your synagogue, to any other charitable organization, you have made a vow. You've made a charitable vow, and that vow has to be kept, and that vow you can be forced to keep that vow by Beit Din. They have the authority to force you. Whereas, just to compare, in the case of a verbal obligation to sell to someone, for example, even though there too you have a moral obligation to keep your word, but Beit Din don't have the authority to force you to do that. It's the right thing to do, but you can't be forced to do it if there hasn't been a contractual act. But in the case of charity, that's not so. Once you say that you want to give over to charity, you've now made a vow to charity. That vow has to be kept, and Beit Din have the authority to force you to keep it. That's the opinion of the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch. The opinion of the Ramah is, however, that a vow to charity can also be made just with your thoughts, even without saying it. Other vows not to charity, you have to say them for them to be valid. But a vow to charity, explains the Gra, according to the opinion of the Ramah, happens by thought. As soon as you have a positive, final intention that you're going to give something over to charity, then the vow has been created, the vow has been done, and you have to keep your vow, and again, Beit Din have the authority to force you to do it. What difference does it make whether your obligation is a vow or a contractual act? One of the differences is whether your children would have an obligation to honor what was done by the father. If it's a contractual act was done, then there's now the property actually belongs to the charity, and the children would be obligated to give it over from their father's estate. But if it's just a vow, vow's a very serious thing, but if it's a vow, then the children aren't obligated to keep the vows of their parents. And so therefore the children would not be obligated to give it over. So you see there's a big difference whether it's a vow or whether it's an actual contractual act. So the halakha is that according to the Ramah, a vow to charity is made mentally, and even if you didn't say it, you'd be obligated to honor your vow. And according to the Shulchan Aruch, it's only verbally, but once you've said it, you have now an obligation to keep your word, to keep your vow, your pledge to charity. And Beit Din have the authority to force you to do that. Let me just add on that in the case of the children, even though children don't have an obligation to honor the vows of their parents, there is certainly what's called a mitzvah lekayim divrei amet. If you look in the poskim, that there's certainly a commandment on the children that they themselves should fulfill the wishes that they know that their parents wanted. So to summarize this halacha, if you said you're going to give charity to your synagogue, must you keep your word? Yes. The answer is you must keep your word. The pledge is a vow, and the vow must be kept. Thank you.